What if I told you that one of the greatest Elden Ring bleed builds of all time has been reborn in Shadow of the Erdtree, resurrected with a brand new weapon? This build opens up an entirely new playstyle, giving you a tactical advantage in all combat scenarios. In PvP, it allows for both zoning and close range combat, with the capability to seamlessly counterattack. While there are countless ways to prepare a build's loadout, this one clearly stands out like none other. Furthermore, setting you up for one of the best NG Plus playthroughs. You'll tackle foes in a way that's never been done before, making it feel like a new experience. This build also offers a defensive playstyle that gives you the confidence to tackle any encounter. No cap. This is only possible by utilizing a hybrid build mindset. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Blade. The name Blade immediately reminded me of the movie, specifically the underground club scene where he throws the circ and it returns like a boomerang. This move alone feels like a legitimate skill, but it's not. There's no FP wasted while maintaining its actual skill. Blind spot. The purpose of this build is to relive the great moments in combat we had with the infamous bleed build we all loved. And even though bleed has been nerfed time and time again, one way or another, it always finds its way back to dominance. So let's dive right in and go through every category from talismans and physics needed to the weapon and stats. You definitely need this build in your arsenal right now, and I'm going to help you get it. The weapon I'm using is called the Smith's Grip Circ. It's within a new weapon class of the backhand blade family, but is better in so many ways, in my humble opinion. It drops from cursed blade enemies, and there are two variants, one with bleed natively baked into it and the other without, which is the one I'm using. You definitely want this one because it has something no other weapon does. Remember I said the basic attack feels like a legitimate skill? Well, anytime you perform a charge attack or a running attack, by default the circ is thrown at your foe, dealing significant damage and bleed buildup. That's because I added the blind spot Ash of War with the bleed affinity. And with the 80 arcane I have as an attribute, the bleed scaling is very impressive. We'll get into how this gets even stronger later in the video, but first, let me tell you what talismans I'm using. These are quintessential to why this deals so much damage, and let's get this out the way first. An essential aspect of this build is the jump attack, we all know that, and you'll need the Claw Talisman, which increases jump attack damage by 15%. Not only does this allow you to attack from a distance, keeping you safe from harm while dishing out damage, but it also feels natural, since jumping has recently been seamlessly integrated into the combat flow, much like evade rolling. With dual-wielded circs, each jump attack results in 2 simultaneous hits, significantly increasing your damage output. These hits also scale with the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia. Because I usually chain attacks together after jumping, you can really feel the damage increase. And one big reason I prefer the circs over backhand blades is due to their range. Often attacks that would miss with the backhand blades because they're faced backwards, ultimately resulting in a shorter reach, lands perfectly with the circs. This added range makes chaining attacks after jumping much more consistent and effective. For the armor, I'm using the Gravebird set. This also increases your damage while jumping by 10%, complementing the Claw Talisman. It also helps the aesthetic of the build style with the way that it looks, being that they're wings and it looks cool while jumping. I'm using Rakshas's Greaves and Legs. This gives you extra damage, 2% while wielding it, but it also makes you a little bit vulnerable as you take damage. And for my head, I'm just using this hood because it looks cool. You can use that other mask that increases your bleed damage if you want to, but this is just my preference. Now, I must say that the reason I'm not using the Mohg's Exaltation Talisman that increases your damage when you cause blood loss is because that only works, I think, when you cause a hemorrhage. And in this build, you're not always hemorrhaging enemies. You're building up the blood loss in order to cause hemorrhage. So I'd rather have something that'll be effective at all times. And that's just my preference. In addition to the Claw Talisman, I use Millicent's Prosthesis, which raises attack power with successive attacks as well, and boosts dexterity. This is a powerful duo. My final talisman is the Axe Talisman, perfect for my playstyle, as it boosts charge attack damage. Combining this with the Spiked Crackteer and your Flask of Wondrous Physick results in about a 26% damage increase due to their multiplicative scaling. Quick tip. Damage scaling in Elden Ring can be both additive and multiplicative, depending on the specific items and buffs used. Generally, when combining 2 talismans, the damage buffs add together. However, the magic happens when you combine talismans and physic tiers, often resulting in a multiplicative effect, significantly increasing your overall damage. This is why the Axe Talisman and Spiked Crackteer combination is so effective. And for an additional boost, you can combine the Spiked Crackteer with the Blood-Sucking Crackteer. It's risky because This drains your health continuously, but offers a damage boost. And that damage is really good for this playstyle specifically against bosses, because you want to get them out of the way as fast as possible. Just be nimble and avoid getting hit. Moving on, we can't overlook one of the best incantations in the game, Golden Vial. This straight up increases your damage output by 15% and damage negation by 10%, lasting for over a minute. Now let's get into the attributes, because this is where things get interesting. This hybrid playstyle provides the defensive prowess to tackle any encounter, as I said before. The build can be made at level 150, don't get me wrong, but for those around level 225 like me, you can implement this specific playstyle additionally. Around 50 to 60 vigor. For the mind, you want I think about 25 to activate certain spirit summons like Yolan and Anna or 𝐤𝐤𝐤𝐿, the best tank in the game. For your endurance and strength, you want enough for a good equipment load and the required 48 strength to wield the fingerprint shield. Dexterity, you don't need much, just a little more than what's required for the weapon or whatever you're comfortable with, but you don't want too much of that. The intelligence, you only need 11 required to use the 𝐸𝐵𝐵𝐵. For faith, you need 25 to activate Golden Vial, and finally Arcane, a whopping 80 for excellent blood loss build-up scaling. And the weapon I'm using for the second playstyle is called the Sword Lance, which comes from defeating Commander Gaius. This weapon is definitely unique. It's a sword and a lance at the same time. I noticed in this patch they're combining playstyles left and right. The great katanas, the light great sword, and I think this is another one because I haven't seen this anywhere else, and it's really good. And it's one of the best thrusting weapons in the game. It has a skill that comes with it called Impaling Thrust, but you don't want that. You want Poison Flower Blooms twice with the bleed affinity, giving you a blood loss buildup of 169. This makes anyone not immune to bleed hemorrhage quickly, all while protected by the fingerprint shield. You can use Verdigris if you want, but I prefer the fingerprint shield. And to utilize your weapon skill while blocking, use the no skill Ash of War on the shield, allowing you to activate Poison Flower Blooms twice while blocking. You can get this no skill Ash of War from that quest a long time ago when you got the necklace from that lady and then she offered you an invitation to that place where you fought to get the blasphemous blade. Anyways, I've always admired shields and appreciate a balanced playstyle, so combining offense and defense suits me perfectly. Plus there are so many enemies in the game that don't even flinch when you're using a playstyle with 2 𝐸𝐵𝐵𝐵, for example, or 2 blades. You'll just be essentially scratching their armor while leaving yourself vulnerable, so it's a little bit difficult for certain people to adapt to dodging all the time. But with the blind spot Ash of War, you definitely have an advantage. Ultimately, this playstyle that offers a shield along with that offensive playstyle, I think is the way to go. But I think I've covered everything here. Sorry for the longer than usual video, but I felt it was necessary. I have to admit though, it was tough to stop using Madness because it's really cool in this expansion. The Matting Hand weapon is awesome, and I even made a build that causes instant full madness with just 1 hit. If you're interested in that, check out this video. And if this guide helped you out in any way, please like and subscribe if you're new here. I'd love to have you. I'll see you in the next one. Be right out.